You're still on mute. There you go.
Oh, okay. They switched the button. Now it works the opposite of whatever. All right. Well, good evening and welcome to the October 15th, 2020 Open Space Conservancy Trust special video meeting. I'm Marie Bender and the chair of the Trust Board. In accordance with Proclamation 20-28.11 and the Governor's extended Safe Start order, tonight's Trust meeting is using video conferencing technology provided by Zoom. The Zoom video of this meeting is being broadcast live via Zoom and will be uploaded to the city's YouTube channel later this evening. Parks Operation Manager Elaine Summergren and several other staff members are participating in tonight's meeting remotely. Other public audience members may be listening to the meeting by telephone or via the internet. Welcome to all and thank you for joining us tonight. Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chair Marie Bender.
Here.
Vice Chair Tom Hildebrandt.
I think you need to unmute. Tom.
Here.
Thank you, sir. Trustee Hilarieth.
Here.
Trustee Geraldine Poor.
Here.
Thank you. Trustee Craig Olson.
Here.
Trustee Carol Burseth.
Here.
And Councilmember Lisa Anderall is not present.
Trustees, before we start the business of tonight's meeting, I want to suggest a few rules to help the meeting run smoothly. If you have a question, please use the raise hand feature or just wave your hand. And I will do my best to recognize trustees in the order they're raised, although I think I'll probably try doing round robin when we're doing direct discussions. Everyone will be asked to limit him or herself to one question and to one clarifying question if necessary, so that each trustee has a chance to ask a question before a trustee is given another chance to ask a question. Before we start tonight's meeting, I would like to take a moment to welcome our new trustee, Hillary Ethy. Welcome, and would you like to give us a little information about yourself and your interest in the board?
Sure thing, Marie. My name is Hillary Etey. I've lived here on Mercer Island for 3 years now. And I became interested in the board through my work as a forest steward with the Parks Department. I've worked closely with Kim for the past 2 years, being the steward out here at Ellis Pond. And we first started living here out by Pioneer Park. And so I wanted to figure out how I could get more involved in taking care of our open spaces.
And we have a few new staff members joining us this evening we don't see them on the screen, but they're here. So we thought it might be a nice thing is if each of us would just, say a couple of sentences to familiarize the staff with who we are. And why don't I start with you, Carol? Can I do that?
Sure, thanks. I'm Carolyn Burseth. I'm a retired physician and I've lived on Mercer Island for about 4 years now. I've been a board member now this will be my 2nd year. And when I lived in another state, I actually served on one of the Parks and Recs commissions there. So was really excited to see an opportunity pop up to do that on Mercer Island.
Craig?
I'm Craig Olson. I'm a retired civil engineer, public works director, and city engineer in the area. And I've lived on the island off and on for about, I'm thinking 35 years. I live in the vicinity of Pioneer Park, so I've used it quite a lot. And I'm very pleased to be on the Open Space Trust Board.
Tom?
Yes, I'm Tom Hildebrandt. I'm a software engineer. We moved to Mercer Island in 1995, so we've been here for 21 years. And both my houses have been close to Pioneer Park, so I consider it a valuable resource.
Jerry?
Thanks. Welcome, Hillary. Glad to meet you. I'm Jerry Poor. Like the two gentlemen who preceded me, I've been on the island since the 1990s. This is my second term on the board, and I'm an urban planner by profession. And that's it.
And I'm Marie Bender. We have been on the island since 2020. No, 2000. I can't say that right. I'm a retired attorney, but I have been a gardener my entire life and spent many, many summers going home to Montana and the mountains there. I have dogs who love being in the park. I also have a horse, so it's sort of interesting to me that the Southeast Quadrant is open to horse riding. And, you know, I just sort of got involved because I love the park. And, you know, being a dog and a horse person, I think added something to the board that we didn't already have. So shall we move on? Tonight's agenda will not include in-person public appearances in accordance with Proclamation 20-28.11 and the governor's extended Safe Start order. However, individuals wishing to speak live during the appearances portion of our meeting may do so by telephone or using the Zoom teleconferencing application. Our city clerk will call on you by name or telephone number when it is your turn to speak. Your comments are limited to 3 minutes, and the city clerk will provide a 30-second warning. City Clerk, are there any people signed up to speak this evening?
Madam Chair, there is no one that is signed up to speak.
Okay, and then we can move on to the first order of business, which is the election of a chair, vice chair, and secretary. Is there a nomination for chair to serve through May 31st, 2021?
I nominate Marie Bender. Oh, sorry.
Thank you. I guess we need a second.
I would second
Second.
that nomination.
Are there any other nominations? Not hearing any, we shall move on to voting. City Clerk, could you call a roll call? Or can we dispense with that by unanimous consent?
Yes, if we have unanimous consent, that would be fine.
Okay, so let the record reflect the unanimous consent. Is there a nomination for vice chair to serve through May 31, 2021? Am I allowed to nominate? I think so. I would nominate Tom Hillebrandt.
I'll second that.
Are there any other nominations? Not hearing any, can we again agree on unanimous consent? City Clerk?
Yes.
Thank you. Is there a nomination for secretary to serve through May 31st, 2021?
I would nominate that our existing secretary continue also, Craig Olson.
I second that.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? Not hearing any, we have agreed by unanimous consent. Thank you. So next on the agenda is to review and consider approving the January 16th, 2020 minutes. I will say I have already conveyed to staff a couple of sort of naming convention issues. So if there's if there anything substantive, we should bring it up now.
Am I muted? Or am I off mute? Yeah, I'm off mute. I reviewed paragraph 2, which was the annual report and work plan, and saw references to chair poor, which is a combination of me and you, Marie, I think. And sorry to ask the scribe to do this, but given that it was so long ago, I don't remember who said what. I can't provide edits to that, but I think some of those were in fact Marie's questions, so it might be better reflected as Chair Bender.
Kim, are you on?
I am. I was just going to, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I did review the recording and my notes and have corrected that. And so corrected where it was supposed to be trustee Poor versus chair Bender. And so I did take care of that. And that was chair Bender regarding that specific
Thank
reference.
you. I only, like Jerry, I only knew that there was something wrong. I wasn't sure what it was. Okay, do we have a motion to approve the minutes with that amendment?
I'd move approval.
A second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Or do I need to take a roll call? Deb?
Madam Chair, I'm comfortable with how you're handling running the meeting. We'll put it that way.
Well, let's put it this way. Is there anybody opposed? Okay, I think we unanimously agree.
As long as you are confirming that, then that works for me. Thank you.
Terrific, thank you. So the motion passes and the minutes are approved. The third item of business is city operations update, which I will then pass it over to Elaine for discussion.
Hello, everyone. I'm so glad to see all of your faces tonight. It's been a really long time, and I'm so glad to see us all in one place together. I guess I can't really say that, but it's nice to have the board back meeting, and I look forward to more meetings and catching you up on everything that's been happening. Tonight, I am going to be doing a short presentation just on parks operations update, just to let you know where we've been, what the effects have been, and then I'm going to hand it over to Jason Kintner, the Public Works Director. He is on the line now, I believe, and he'll be looking forward a little bit in terms of the organizational structure. So let me go ahead and share my screen here and make sure that you can all see that. Can I get at least one thumbs up, maybe? Yep. Okay, great. All right. So like I said, I just want to provide a little bit of a look back at this year and some of the changes that have happened with city operations, some of which have had direct effects on trust properties, and some of which are just more general and I think are useful for you all to be aware of. The first place I'm going to start out is just with the Parks and Rec Department in general. So as many of you likely know, the COVID pandemic has had quite an effect on the Parks and Recreation Department for Mercer Island. Because of all of the regulations around gatherings, became pretty obvious pretty quickly that the community center needed to be shut down, and that happened in March of this year. And with it went all of the things associated, the recreation programs, special events, the facility rentals, but also the things that were happening outdoors in parks, a lot of the things that had gatherings associated with them. So athletic field reservations, special events in our parks, and any picnic area reservations. So this was a pretty big change from how we normally operate in the Parks and Rec Department. As a result, there were pretty significant workforce reductions within the department that were implemented at various times in the spring. As a result of those reductions and reorganization, the Parks Maintenance team actually moved over to the Public Works Department. So this included, 9 staff that were reporting to me within Parks Operations. Started reporting to the right-of-way and stormwater manager, Brian Harvickson, who, as you can imagine, then was quite loaded with staff, but he did a great job taking them on. And then the Emergency Operations Center team, which has been various temporary staff positions, took on a lot of the other sort of general duties that Parks and Recreation deals with. and have been ongoing since the pandemic started. So I want to look at the staffing structure of the Parks and Rec Department way back when in January, which may feel like years ago, but was only 9 months ago. And just kind of look at how it's changed this year. So here you see how it looked in January. One of the things that I wanted to point out here is that in red, I have created a little red box around a position called the Parks Maintenance Foreman. It has a star next to it because it was a position that was supposed to be filled at the beginning of this year, but was never filled really due to the pandemic. So that's a position, though it was slated, was never filled. You'll see below that position, there are 9 parks maintenance full-time employees, 2 of which are crew leads. And I just want to point this out because as I shift here, so in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see that there's how many FTEs, so full-time equivalents employees in the beginning of 2020 was 28.8 FTEs, and that's 30 employee equivalents. So now if we shift to September of this year, you'll see the really dramatic reduction of positions within Parks and Recreation, which has really been dispersed, those remaining positions. There's a couple of things I want to point out on here also. So if you look back down in the lower left-hand corner, you'll see where the Parks Maintenance team is. And you'll see that not only has that foreman position been eliminated, but then also that the number of FTEs within Parks Maintenance went down also by 1 employee. I've also marked on here the amount of casual labor because that wouldn't normally be shown on an organizational chart like this because they aren't FTEs. But I think it's worth noting that in a normal year, we would have roughly 9 parks maintenance casual labor employees, so seasonal employees that would help support that team, doing a lot of the routine work in parks like emptying garbage cans, cleaning restrooms, and allowing the full-time employees to really be doing sort of the more technical parks maintenance work, pruning, all of the sort of fine work. And then also on the natural resources side, which really does have a direct effect on the trust properties, the natural resources casual labor, which is our natural resources crew, which is normally 3 to 4 positions that last 6 months a year. And those were all eliminated as a result of the pandemic. So hiring had just begun in early March. And then there was a freeze put on hiring, and ultimately all hiring was suspended for those casual labor positions. So I think it's worth just reflecting that normally during the busiest time of the year, we would have a significantly higher amount of staff. So this was quite a change for us. You'll see in the upper right-hand corner, I'll point again to this FTE count. The FTE count for the Parks and Recreation Department went down by 16 full-time equivalents. And as I mentioned before, the Parks Operations team in its entirety also moved over to the Public Works Department. So, you know, zeroing in a little bit more on Parks Operations and the timing around this. So in March, I mentioned that the casual labor hiring was suspended, but also there was a pretty significant shift in the type of work that the remaining staff were doing. So all of our parks maintenance staff really went to essential services only. And this was really dealing with services that were specifically around safety and sanitation. So really keeping our parks safe, dealing with issues that were coming up that were very pressing, and then also doing some extra sanitation duties, restroom cleaning, just to make sure that the parks that were open were, you know, really being taken care of well and were safe for all the people who were interested in being outdoors in the parks. In April, both my position as the Parks Operations Manager and Kim Frappier's position as the Natural Resources Specialist were both eliminated. And we were both reassigned to the Emergency Operations Center. We did various duties in the Emergency Operations Center. We had a varied experience, and we got to work with some great folks over there. We helped stand up the call center for the city, so the central line, which is still active today and doing really well. And then also some work with the planning section. So really looking at the recovery and the return to work for employees. It was during this time when the Parks Maintenance team was moved over to the Public Works Department. April and May we generally operated about on that same level. So really a focus on essential services only. I will say there was pretty limited services like mowing and things like that, just to make sure that the staff could still get into those areas without hurting equipment and keeping our landscapes from really getting too far behind where we wouldn't be able to catch up when things came back. In June, the Parks Maintenance team came back on more of a normal work schedule and returned to their normal duties. So really a shift from just essential services back to a sort of a standard suite of duties. And it was also at this time, sometime in mid-June, when Kim and I both had our positions restored back to exactly where they had been before, except now housed within the Public Works Department. So as you can imagine, coming back in June is a very different place than starting off a season in March. So we get so much of our really big flushes of growth during the whole spring season. And there was a lot of catch up to do beyond just sort of what our normal timing would be for doing some of these tasks. And so really in mid-June, things very much started to kick into high gear, really just trying to do a lot of catch-up work. And I want to talk a little bit about that and how the priorities shifted. So focusing on natural resources for a second, I just want to give some really big thanks and some kudos to Kim Frappier for really jumping in with both feet when her position was restored. She normally would be doing her scoping and her bidding and her contracting for restoration services in all of our natural areas in March, right about the time when the pandemic really hit. And when she came back in June, she really had to kick it into high gear to try and get those bids out so that she could get people on the ground to perform a lot of that maintenance work that was now a bit behind. And maybe we were a little bit off timing for, when we would normally do certain tasks, but she really just put her head down and tried to get them out there as quickly as possible so that she could tackle a lot of those tasks that needed to be done. She also needed to do some of the normal stuff that the crew would normally very much take on, like noxious weed mapping, and in the case of actual regulated noxious weeds, the treatment or removal of those weeds. And a good example of that is the knotweed program. So she would normally rely very heavily on the crew to help with those. They're very labor intensive, visiting a lot of sites, and she really had to step it up to try and tackle a lot of those as quickly as possible. And then in addition to that, we had a lot of interest from our forest stewards in getting back out. I mean, it was, people wanted to be out in the forests doing work and helping with restoration efforts. It's a good place to be when you're trying to socially distance. And, with the cancellation of all of our volunteer events in all of our natural areas, really trying to figure out a way to get those people who were very well trained in forest stewardship back out and working either independently or maybe with a family member. So she worked on that really hard. Again, with this big flush of vegetation that we get in the spring, our trails and urban forestry specialist, Andrew Prince, was also very busy getting back out and brushing out all of the trails in June. So going out and really trying to make sure our trails were clear, pruning branches back from those trails, because again, we had a really high interest in people just being out and hiking. He spent a lot of his time doing that solo or with maybe one other parks maintenance team member. But normally, again, that would be something that our seasonal crew would be working on pretty heavily. He was also dealing with any needed repairs, drainage issues on trails that he was finding. In addition, he was also doing his normal tree work. So that is especially, while normally he would be proactively out assessing trees along some of our parks boundaries, he was responding to a lot of inquiries from people about parks trees and whether they needed to be assessed. And then in the cases where they did need pruning or removal because of safety, doing that bidding and contracting work. So this team of two, which is really together make up 1.5 full-time employees, really have just been working incredibly hard to try and catch up with their workload and doing it with a lot fewer people. So I want to commend them for all of that. It's definitely not taken for granted. And then on the parks maintenance side, again, there was a real shift in priorities for them. I think this was a little bit difficult. I think it was difficult for them. And I think it's somewhat difficult for the public also, because we're used to our parks really looking a certain way and being, just being to a pretty high standard of care. And really the priority had to shift because of where we came into the season, where things were already very well grown in, but also because they were down so much of that casual labor. And so their priorities really shifted to, first and foremost, COVID-related tasks. So, and this was implementing and maintaining closures on playgrounds, some of our amenities, and in one case, a park that was, we weren't successfully having social distancing in. They were doing a lot of that work, and that was pretty busy for them. In addition, normally in the spring would be our time for irrigation startup. So doing our full audits on all of our irrigation systems, getting them up for the season. So there was a mad dash to really get the irrigation up and running again in time for the hottest times of the year, so that we would, really minimize any plant loss. And areas that had new plantings in them were really prioritized pretty heavily. They were obviously also focused on any safety related work. So any inspections they needed to do. You can see in the lower left-hand corner here, this is one of our staff members putting up swim lines at Groveland Beach. So there were safety related tasks that just need to get done every year or quarterly. In midsummer, field rentals came back online, our athletic fields, and so making sure that those were safe for play and that they were prepared for all of our user groups. And then essential maintenance. So this is more like the regular mowing, just to keep things manageable and looking good and being really functional for our parks visitors. The things that fell off their plate were really the things that are maybe the most noticeable in some ways. So these are the, the edging and the blowing, the pruning, the weeding, and it really has been a lot of deferred work in this area. Another area that just hasn't been able to get very much attention is things like athletic field rehabilitations that we would normally do seasonally, and then project work, replacing old fixtures and the like. So these guys have been just absolutely busy the entire time, just playing catch up as much as possible. I think one thing that I've alluded to, but I think is worth mentioning again, and probably this middle picture is my favorite, which is that people loved the parks this summer. I mean, they just really loved them. And they were really well used. And what that translated to was just a lot of garbage, honestly, in the parks, and a lot of overflow in the parks. And so the crew was spending a really significant amount of their time out there just trying to keep up with emptying garbage cans and dealing with loose litter. The crows were not helping us on this. And, during basically the height of summer, they were spending roughly 1/3 of their total hours just dealing with garbage in the parks. So as you can imagine, that takes a toll on the rest of their already limited work. So this has been a tough summer, but I will say we're all very happy with fall arriving and things slowing down a little bit in the parks, growth slowing down a little bit in the parks, and really being able to regroup and get ready, do some planning, do some catch-up work on things that need attention, and looking forward to next year and what that could look like. So I think with that, now that I'm transitioning towards looking forward, I'm going to pass it over to Jason Kintner, Public Works Director, who's going to talk a little bit about what's in the proposed biennial budget for 21-22 and the staff organizational structure that's in front of council presently.
Good evening, Jason Kintner, Public Works Director. It's nice to be back in front of the Open Space Conservancy Trust Board. My background is actually, I grew up on Mercer Island, or grew up working for Mercer Island since 2005 in the park system. I became the park superintendent for many years and then moved over to Public Works back in 2015. So it's nice to be back with you all. So the fact that Parks Maintenance is moving over into Public Works is sort of refreshing for me because I get to do more fun stuff again, rather than just the same old day-to-day utility stuff. Not that they aren't exciting in their own right, but it's just not quite the same as parks and open space. So as Elaine's been talking about, we do have a new organizational structure proposed in 21 and 2022. We are clearly an organization in transition. So, you know, as Elaine was going through these slides, it feels like March feels like it was so long ago. And I will tell you, this pandemic had massive impacts on this organization. And we really, you know, our staff rallied and came together and found a way to make it happen. But it feels like it was years ago, not months ago. And we've come a long way since then. I sort of smiled when Elaine said that the park operations are back to normal, because I say normal with an asterisk, right? Normal is no longer the way they used to be. We still have crews split across multiple facilities. They're still doing their weekly team meetings on the Teams or Zoom platform. Everything's remote. It's just not quite the same. But we are managing, and they're persevering, and they're doing a great job. So, but we continue to be an organization in transition. And I think it's important to note that, in particular, Parks and Recreation as a department as a whole is completely in transition. And so because of that, because we don't know the future structure of the department, my background, Jesse's background as the city manager, it made sense to bring Parks Maintenance, Open Space, and the capital side of the house under the Public Works umbrella. The work on the operational side that they do is very similar to some of the other crews. They're part of the same bargaining unit. On one of the previous slides that Elaine had, if you go back and look at it, there was a little white diamond at the bottom of the org chart position titles. That represents a bargain position. So there's a lot of similarities between our teams, and it fits in nicely. I will say, as we look to the future, we are definitely focusing our organization on efficiencies and improvements, service level improvements, and really looking to strengthen our core team and start talking about some succession planning. There's no denying it. In our organization, we have some staff, some very tenured staff that have been here for 20 or 30 years, and they have a ton of institutional knowledge. And the last thing you want to see happen is those folks to go off into the retirement sunset without transferring that institutional knowledge to our organization, so that we can make sure that we continue a high level of service. So these are some of the key themes presented in the new organizational structure. This was presented to the council in September, late September. And the reason for it is it's a little different than a normal budget process. And the reason for it was because as the council starts to look at each individual department budget, they look at the bottom line. And obviously when you're an organization that's, I want to say it's 72% of it is salaries and wages of your employees. And you look at that bottom line for the budget and the numbers go up, you need to have the story that goes along with it. And so in particular, the Public Works Operations Department has grown for some pretty key reasons, one of them being the Parks Maintenance, Open Space, and Capital team coming over to Public Works. So before Elaine goes to the next slide, I will say the chart in front of you, the blue is an existing position. The yellow is what's proposed in the preliminary budget that was presented to the council. And then the purple represents a budget proposal that the council will be considering as part of their budget deliberations. And we'll talk about that in just a few seconds. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So here is the Public Works Department. And I'll say it's split between operations and engineering. So on the left side of the screen is our operational team. And on the right side of the screen is our capital engineering side of the house. As you can see, again, the white diamonds represent a bargained or a union position. And you can see within the operational side of the house, we have our parks and natural resource team there. As Elaine referenced before, the parks foreman position was a position that was actually planned to fill this year. It was a COVID cut, I guess is the way to describe it. But it is proposed in the preliminary budget to be restored. I will say it's really important to note that on the public works side, a couple of years ago, we implemented a new business system, and it's called CityWorks. It's a Esri platform, it's GIS based. It is our asset management system. Stormwater, water, sewer, they have all implemented the CityWorks system. And Parks has begun, much in thanks to Elaine's massive effort to get this underway, they've begun implementing CityWorks as well. And this is how we track assets. It helps us with our future projections for asset life cycle, capital reinvestment needs, O&M needs moving forward. That foreman position is essential to how we manage our operations. There's a hierarchy and a quality control, a responsibility of programming, scheduling, things like that, that all goes through that foreman position. Right now, Elaine as the manager has been acting as the manager / default foreman and carrying double duty. It's quite a load. So I'm happy to see that the parks foreman position is in the preliminary budget, and that'll be a key position as we move forward. You can see down below the parks maintenance casual labor, that's in a purple box. So that is a budget proposal. This is going to be an interesting conversation with our electeds because as we've all seen, the COVID pandemic has had a pretty significant impact on our parks. And I think it's fair to say that our level of service has declined in this last year because we've been playing catch up along the way. Those casual labor positions are essential to maintaining that quality of life and level of service that we've enjoyed for many years. It really does allow the full-time employees, the full-time team members to focus on larger, bigger tasks, some special projects, things like that throughout the course of the busy seasons, especially spring, summer, and into fall. Winters, I really would say winter is probably the only sort of down season we have, and that's a stretch in itself. So the casual labor is a budget proposal. So this will be something that will be in front of the council that they will discuss. We did propose that budget, I believe, at the existing pre-COVID levels, which would be approximately 9 casual labor positions. I'm optimistic we're going to get some of them back. I'm not sure we're going to get all of them back. The council has a set of priorities that they will have to go through, but that will be definitely an interesting conversation for the council and the community. Just real quickly, additionally on the operations side, we have a proposed Deputy Public Works Director, again, overseeing the operational side of the house. So we talk about span and control. The number we sort of strive for with span and control is ideally 5. We don't like to go above 7 if at all possible. It just stretches people too thin. So adding that Deputy Public Works Director will help with the operational side of the house. Before I move off operations, I think it's important to talk about the Support Services Manager. And a couple other yellow boxes on that line. The support services manager is a new position overseeing our warehouse function. So we are an island. We Home Depot's in Bellevue, yes, but there are challenges to getting materials to and from the island. And so we actually have a team member who operates and manages our warehouse, and that supports all of the teams, capital teams, as well as our operational teams, as well as police and fire, CPD, and other elements of the city. So in fact, that team member was responsible for helping get our PPE squared away early in the pandemic. Fleet runs through the support services. I've talked about CityWorks a little bit. We have a CityWorks coordinator position. So one thing that we have learned with our CityWorks system is that once you implement the system, you have to continually feed it. You have to continue modifying. You have to continue to fine tune it so that you can generate the operational analysis that you need to continue to refine your operations. And so this is a dedicated position to support that business system for these teams. I will say our engineers, bless their hearts, I love our engineers, but they are engineers. And our engineers in particular have their own way. I know, Craig, I know, I'm sorry. They have their set way of doing things. And so introducing CityWorks to them is a new adventure. And so we'd like to get them on the CityWorks platform as well, because it'll be able to talk to our operational side in a much more cohesive manner. So we have a CityWorks position identified in the budget. And then I think it's also important to note that you see some custodians listed below. When the COVID pandemic rolled out and we had to increase our high touch cleaning or high frequency cleaning of our city buildings, previously our city hall, the public works building, and some of the other city facilities were actually had a custodial contract in place. We chose, because of our concerns over the validity of that contractor actually doing that work, to do this work in-house. We found it to be far more effective and reliable than using the contractor. In a public works environment, oftentimes we are bound by public works bidding law, which requires that we have to take the lowest responsive bidder. And so sometimes that doesn't always equate to good service. So this is a business decision that was made as part of the COVID pandemic. So I would actually say this is a good thing that came out of the COVID pandemic, was to bring our custodial work back in-house. Moving over to the engineering side of the house, another big piece on the public works change is that our development review, our city engineer and the development review team is actually moving into public works. They're currently housed in the community planning and development department, but their work on permit reviews is really specific to public works projects, tying into public works, water and sewer infrastructure, stormwater infrastructure. So we made the decision to move the city engineer and that development review team back into the public works umbrella and make our engineering and capital team more robust. You'll see we have an additional development engineer identified for that side of the house. That is all about succession planning. And our 3 CIP project managers you see below is because we have a number of backlog capital projects to get done due to the COVID pandemic. And then we have aging infrastructure. We are a built out city, both within our parks and our utilities, our streets. We have infrastructure that's nearing the end of its useful life, and we have to get that work done. If we don't get it done, it's going to continue to cost us more money down the road. So these CIP project managers, they're not engineers. That was by design. When you have a PE, it tends to bring you in at a different pay level, but these CIP project managers are, the job description will be for them to come in. They will not be one-dimensional. What I mean by that is you're not going to have a CIP project manager come in and just focus in on parks. In fact, talking with the park CIP project manager, he's going to start dipping his toes into some sewer work. So the idea is to be versatile and cross over into some different disciplines with the goal to really refocus our attention on capital reinvestment and getting those projects done necessary to improve our city. Last but not least, you see another purple box at the top, and this is our sustainability program manager. You may or may not know this, but our sustainability and communications person currently is split 60-40. 60% communications, 40% sustainability. I can tell you, given the magnitude of the topics of conversation amongst our community and city right now, that 98 or 99% of his time is going to 100% communications or 99% communications. And that has been a frequent issue for a few years now. So what's proposed is to actually split those two positions off, have one communication manager and one sustainability program manager. I will say the sustainability position falls within public works because we're really looking at trying to integrate sustainability within our operations and our capital work. What I mean by that is I'll use a sewer pump station as an example. These pump stations typically have 2 to 3 pumps in a pump station. They are our highest energy users in terms of our city assets. They're pumping our sewage around the island and off into the treatment center. When we replace those pumps, we need to be considering what alternatives can be considered to actually improve our sustainability footprint. Can we get a cleaner running generator? Can we get a cleaner running pump? Should we be looking at alternative power? Should we be looking at alternative energy? These are the types of things that this position will be looking to do, integrating with both our operations and our capital side of the house. So there's a number of sustainability improvements that we can make that are at, I would consider, the ground level within our teams that this position will help us achieve. It is also purple, so it's a purple box, meaning it's a budget proposal that will go in front of the council. So again, I expect good council discussion and questions that come out of that budget proposal, which is likely going to be in front of the council the 2nd of November. So with that, I will say we have a council meeting on October 20th, which is just next Tuesday. We are going into the Public Works operations team budget at that point in time. And then we will also be visiting the capital side of the house, which also, you know, our open space capital program is a big piece, and that's in the capital side that will be talked about on October 20th as well. It's likely these purple boxes and other budget proposals, other proposals that come from council will come up on the 2nd. So I will pause there and I will ask any questions. Actually, before I pause, I lied. Sorry. Before I pause, I will say on the Parks and Recreation side of the house, I didn't have this slide. The recreation side of the house is what we're calling a recreation transition team. That is because we don't know the future of that department. And so the intent is to start with some key employees to help rebuild that team. What is it going to look like? What is the subsidy going to be? Is there going to be a subsidy? What does our recreational programming look like moving forward? What's it going to take to stand up the community center moving forward? All of that analysis has to be done. And so we're looking to do that in the first part of next year, with hopefully starting to slowly reopen the community center and other lines of business, hopefully by summer of next year. So we call it a transition team because we have to figure that out. And it's going to take another council action to do that, which is perfectly fine, but we want to make sure we get it right. So that's an important piece to note here. So I will pause, and if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
So, I mean, thank you, Elaine and Jason. That was very thorough. I won't say that there were any surprises there, but it's good to get the details behind what's been going on. I will also say the parks have been looking really good given the situation. So thank you. So I think the easiest way for me to just kind of go around and ask people if they have questions or comments or thoughts. Carol, can I start with you and ask you to unmute?
Yeah, I think I did unmute. You hear me?
Yes, I hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I'll just start with a comment. As someone who goes out to the community gardens and who walks the quadrant that I'm assigned, I was not aware of the operations that have been underlying, some of the experiences that I've had. And I'm just so impressed. We had a tough start in the community gardens, and, we had a couple of folks bringing out lawnmowers and, pitching in where we could to get things tidied up. The grasses that grow along the where the community center is, they just kept growing, taller and taller and taller, and they were taller than me by the time I was making my way. It must have been around, June when I noticed they finally started to disappear. And I also noticed that there was some deterioration of the paths in my quadrant. The raspberries and other shrubs were encroaching on the paths, and then I didn't realize it was right around June. Things looked remarkably better. And I know folks may look at, maintaining the public lands as kind of frivolous and not as important to the cities. But I would argue that particularly with COVID, I think they play such an important role in maintaining the mental health of folks who are isolated and really are seeking to have other ways of engaging with the environment around them. And certainly would support any efforts that you're making in terms of trying to find funding for additional headcount, because I think that is just, it's really important to the health of the community. So I guess my major comment is, many, many thanks for all the work that you all have been doing.
Any questions?
No, I want to see the garden, the community garden come back, but I understand we're kind of, further down.
Okay. So Craig, what about you? Is that a?
Am I back? Yeah. Well, I just think it's very commendable. I would agree with Caroline that all of a sudden everything started looking really good. And they've really done a remarkable job. I'm very proud of them. It is interesting though, is there any other grant funding sources available? I'm sure the staff are going after them as they have time. But it's probably just the same old stuff from the state budget and other things like that are available. But that's not, it's unfortunate. The utilities are in good shape because that was, as an engineer, those were the funds that were always available. So all the rest of this is probably, a lot of it is from the general fund and all the shortfalls we have there. It's going to be really hard to find the money and the resources to add a lot of these positions. So that's all I have.
Okay, Jared.
Oh,
go ahead, Elaine. Sorry.
Sorry about that, Marie. I was just gonna say something to Craig about that, which is, I know this isn't less looking forward about, sort of open positions, but I do want to mention that, on the parks maintenance side, particularly because we haven't had the casual labor that would normally cover weekends, we have been able to use some of our funding specifically around COVID to fund some of that, weekend staff work. So although it's been limited, it's been great to at least have a little bit of backup there, so we don't have to sort of burn through, all of our funding, which is we're trying to make work for a lot of things right now. So that's been a really good resource. And there's a lot of different parts of the city that need that funding. So every little bit that anyone gets is really just pretty amazing. So.
Jerry?
So I would echo the two prior board members, agree that things have looked very good, especially given the circumstances. And I've found, as someone who used to commute downtown for work every day, I'm thankful to have a lot more time on our island, and I found parks and trails I hadn't been on before, and appreciate that. I wonder if I understand this isn't a staff issue, but among the board members, I wonder if we want to send any kind, if there's a sense that it's necessary for us to send a note to council that endorses the staff budget proposals. It seems like it may not be necessary, but I'd like to propose it.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah. Jerry, I would volunteer to work with you to try to draft something.
Okay.
Should we do that?
Yeah.
Anybody?
If that's what everyone thinks, yeah, I'd love to.
Yes.
Given that the time before this budget proposal comes before the council is short, I would propose that we just give the committee authority to go ahead and send a note to the council on behalf of the entire board. So I move that we allow Jerry and Marie to work together to send a letter of endorsement of the budget to the city council.
I'd second that.
All in favor, raise your hand. All right, I think we have unanimous consent. Thank you. But I will say this, I would not send anything to the council without at least sending it to everyone once separately to get your comments. Because I really feel strongly that I don't want to represent this board without knowing that everybody feels like we're in the right direction. But I think it's a really good thing for us to go ahead. So Tom, did you have, I mean, Jerry, were you finished? So Tom, did you have any comments or questions in addition?
Well, aside from echoing the kudos to the skeleton crew that's been out there making things look great, I would say that the presence of the pandemic and everyone working from home and being sort of isolated has put a lot of pressure on the parks. And so it's more important that we allocate funds to maintain them. And my informal census of the amount of usage the parks have been getting since around March has been about double what I would consider normal. And so the city should be encouraged to make an allocation to keep the parks well maintained with that in mind.
So I had one question, Jason. I am strongly in favor of there being a sustainability manager. And I'm curious as to how that person would support sustainability in the parks. Is that part of the thought process?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I say they're integrated into the operations, parks is a huge part of our operations. And there are opportunities for it, right? So there's a plethora of opportunity for this individual to make strides in our operations and our capital program. So absolutely, I think that's a no-brainer for me, to be perfectly honest. I mean, you laugh, but it's true. I mean, there's a policy that we have that's been bounced around that we haven't. It's a sensitive policy, don't get me wrong, but it's our herbicide use policy, right? That touches parks. I know the Open Space Trust Board has their own guidelines and policies, but globally within the rest of our park system, that's been a topic of conversation. It's directly tied to levels of service. It's directly tied to the budgetary impacts, and it's tied to sustainability. So again, that's like one that just comes right to mind. That's an easy one, but there's so many other opportunities for sustainability part of parks. The other piece I'll say to this, and I didn't really touch on it, was parks and stormwater have a relationship as well. And we need to cultivate a better relationship, which is tied to our open spaces and things like that. So there's definitely an opportunity for sustainability to be integrated in the operations for all of our operations and capital work. Absolutely.
So I'm really glad to hear that. And I would personally like to invite that person to meet with the trust board as soon as it makes sense to do so. Because I would love for us to have an ongoing conversation and talk with that person pretty much on a regular basis.
Yeah. I think that's a great idea. Just so you know, our sustainability manager has actually come to the utility board and talked about sustainability measures as well as ties to utility. So I think there's a great opportunity there. So
okay, terrific. Let's see. I don't think there's anything for us to vote on with respect to this. Elaine?
I don't think Hillary had a chance in that round robin.
Oh, I'm sorry, Hillary. That's my fault.
No worries. I really don't have any questions. I just want to say thank you to Jason and Kim and Elaine for all the work that you guys and your crew have been doing, because the parks just look awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay, then shall we move on to the last order of business, which is to consider changes and updates to our the bylaws for the trust. I'm not sure, Elaine or Deb, which one of you wants to walk through this with us?
I think Elaine and I agree. We we play a little bit of tennis. I'm going to share my screen and we will work together to bring this home.
Okay.
So give me a moment while I close out a couple of things over here. Okay. Let me know when you can see this. Everyone's good?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So this is primarily, this is a little bit, this is city clerk going a little bit geek on you. There's a lot of procedural things that we wanted to correct in here, but the main reason why this was started was the city council at the beginning of the year changed how they appoint members to the various boards and commissions. But in order to be consistent across all boards and commissions, the open space requires a public hearing in order to change your bylaws in any way. So while we were in there making that change, we thought, you know, let's go in there and clean up a couple of other things, clarify some process, put in place some consistency, and try and do as much housekeeping at one time that we can. So I'm just going to go through, you did receive a cover memo to this, kind of outlining the various things. And I'm just going to go down the document. And if you have questions, I would encourage you to ask me. So the first one is, as you can see, it's just a spelling piece here. The next one is the organization, which speaks to how you are appointed, the number and the appointment. Again, this was a clarifying piece to be consistent with the other boards and commissions and the new appointment process that the council has. But it was also to clarify that 6 of you will be appointed one way, which is by the full council, and then the council member is appointed by the mayor at the beginning of the year. Were there any questions on that particular point?
Yeah, I guess the only question I had, you know, it was my understanding I was appointed by the mayor into my position. So does this represent a change or, and I understand,
Yes.
I know from reading, you know, the Mercer Island, you know, weekly or whatever, that the other boards are appointed by the city council. So is this so that we're better aligned with the way that the other groups are functioning?
Yes, that's exactly what it's about, Carol. It's about being consistent with the appointment process for the other boards and commissions. Historically, the mayor has been the appointing authority, and this council decided they want more of a collective voice in making these decisions. And so they moved to a council appointment process. And so to bring the open space into the same process as everybody else, it requires an amendment here.
And I just have another question that I know that there's a lot of politics around, you know, the open spaces versus the parks and so on. And I guess my only question is it by history that, you know, the mayor used to make these appointments so that they were separate from, you know, a major amount of political process? Or, I mean, I don't understand, you know, why we've done it one way and we're going to do it the other, because usually these sorts of things, there's a history that underlies them, and it might be helpful to know that.
I think what you have is a council that wants to work more as a team.
Mhm.
You do have a city manager council form of government, and in that form of government, you don't have a strong mayor.
Okay.
And so, and no one council member, the mayor included, has a stronger voice than any others. And so I think the appointment process that they have turned to is mirrors that form of government. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I don't have any major objection to the change. I'm
Okay.
trying to understand, you know, where.
Sure. Well, you know, I mean, I can only speak to it from a staff perspective. I can't really get into what may or may not exist as far as inside ball game.
Yeah.
That's my understanding of why we're doing this. It's just a desire to be, to share the appointment process across the full council. More of a collaboration, a team effort.
Deb, I don't know about other people, but I lost your screen.
Did you lose my screen?
Yeah.
Sharing, yeah, you aren't sharing anymore. Oh, there you are.
Okay. Apparently I can only put this on I have 3 computer screens in front of me. And I thought maybe if I moved it over to my laptop, which is where my camera is, that I would be looking at you instead of like this. But so bear with me if I appear to be ignoring you. So are there any other questions regarding that particular point? No? Okay. So again, moving on down, term limits, just again, cleaning this up a little bit.
Deb, I'm sorry to interrupt. It looks like maybe Jerry had a comment.
Oh, okay.
Thanks,
Sorry.
Elaine, as I struggle with my mute button. I have kind of an overarching question, which is, I wonder if as you go through this, if you'd be able to point out if there are spots where I'm going to use the term enabling legislation. I don't know if that's right, but I mean, I understand the Open Space Conservation Trust founding document wrote in some things that might mean that we can't be exactly the same as the other commissions or not. And I wondered if you could highlight anywhere where we are different because of that founding language.
Well, you are a little bit different because you are you do have those ordinances that can't be changed very easily. And so your bylaws, what happened here is your bylaws weren't terribly consistent with the ordinances. And so the effort here is to be consistent without deviating from what your ordinances establishing the open space trust accomplished. Because we're not prepared to delve into changing that. We want to, your bylaws are kind of your bylaws, so to speak. I'm not an attorney, but they kind of break it down a little bit farther for you.
So am I hearing you correctly that changes being made to our bylaws here bring us closer to the ordinances that founded us rather than?
I think they help align you a little bit more and
Thank you.
some clarification.
Okay.
Elaine, what do you think?
Yeah, we've tried over the last few revisions to bring them closer together, but I think in some ways it just removes conflicts. So I agree, it does bring them closer.
Okay. I heard before you saying that it was to make us more like the other committees. So I just didn't want to exacerbate the differences.
Right. Only where the appointment process was concerned. And I apologize if I wasn't clear. Only where the appointment process is concerned.
In my opinion, the bylaws should be a document which stand for how we govern ourselves internally. So there's this distinction with the ordinances that form the board as being documents that state our power and how the process external to the board takes place. So the language concerning how appointments are made are actually just a recitation of the revision to the process document, which was done in January or February of this year. I think it's okay to have a recitation like that, but then there should be a pointer or a reference back to the document which actually establishes that procedure. So the quoting of that document within the bylaws is good for background, but I would consider it to be non-normative in the sense that the actual governing law exists with the procedures that are established by the city council. And so that's my feeling about that particular section.
So to be to be clear, Tom, I mean, I heard you say a couple of things. Do you support the appointment process, the revised appointment process? Or are you saying that you would rather stay with what was there originally?
This is what the city council has decided. So I don't believe that it's necessary to revise the bylaws because the bylaws should be our internal laws rather than how we deal with city council in particular. So the council establishes the appointment process. The board doesn't exist before the council creates the board by appointing members to it. And so in that sense, we really don't have any power over the appointment process. So personally, I favor having the appointment done by the council, but practically I would say that it's up to the council how they want to do the appointments.
Certainly, and I would say that I think that they're trying to respect the process that you have in place and the ordinance, but at the same time bring it in alignment, and so that the language is consistent, how we communicate the appointment process is consistent. It might help to maybe put on the hat of somebody in the community who's not as familiar with the open space or the council process, and they see this conflict or this discrepancy in the appointment process.
Yes, so to be clear, I favor the change in wording in paragraph A.
Okay,
And I think that should be accompanied with a reference back to the city procedures document that has changed that process for other boards.
so if I add some language in here where I'm gonna have to, let me put it this way. Kim, I know you're on here, and if you would just make a note for me, I will find a way to connect this with the legislation that the council has put in place, I think is what you're looking for, so that there's some connection there and why this is being done. Is that correct? Hildebrand, I'm not sure if I'm.
Oh, yes, just adding a reference back
Yes.
to the, I forget the exact, the revision 81 or, yes, I don't remember the number of the resolution that changed the council procedures, but that's
Okay.
the document that should be cited.
Okay, all right. I was gonna say, I can't really reference the ordinance because the ordinance only affects the municipal code and that doesn't impact the OSCT, so.
So Deb, can I step back now? Because now I'm a little confused.
Okay.
Is paragraph A the only part of the changes being proposed that has anything to do with the council?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
And so while we were in there making this change, it just made sense for us to go in and do some general housekeeping, bring your bylaws into compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, clarify some titles, maybe add a little bit more detail to how things are done.
Okay, so if you would for us, and I read your memo and that's great, but it's kind of easier walking through.
I agree.
For all of the particular changes, could you sort of clarify this is because of the council, this is because of open public meetings, this is because of
Yes,
whatever other reason?
yes,
Thank you.
gladly. So are we done with section 2.8? Okay. Coming down to term limits, that's just this is a councilmatic thing. Council members are appointed for 2 years to the various boards and commissions. So this is just correcting that from 1 year to 2 year. Okay. All right. The terminology here in section C where it says no trustee shall serve more than 2 consecutive terms. If a trustee is appointed to a vacancy of a term or years, so on and so forth. This is language that is consistent, again, this is going back to your request, Marie. This is an item that is consistent with our other boards and commissions. It's not required. We just thought that it helped clarify term limits. That open space conspiracy. Open Space Conservancy Trust members are appointed for 2 terms, similar to your other boards and commissions. Your president, so that we don't have somebody serving for 12 years, 16 years, so on and so forth. Is there any concerns about that piece?
I have a comment.
Certainly.
I think that one of the ideas behind the formation of the trust is to place certain properties in holdings that are separate from the city, and in order to ensure the stability of the trust, and there's language of holding these properties and maintaining them as open space in perpetuity, that the continuity of membership of the board is important. So calling again to mind the fact that the trust board is something a little different from the other boards and commissions because we actually are a trust. I would say that it may not be appropriate to ensure that there's turnover in the membership of the board by adding language that limits membership in the board to 2 consecutive terms. I don't have a strong opinion on this. I'm just calling that out as something that is worthy of discussion.
You make a good point, Tom. I don't have a strong opinion about it either. Again, this is where, as clerk, I like I said, when I started, go a little bit geeky in that I look for consistency in how things are written. If there is a majority of the open space that would prefer to not have that change in place, by all means, let me know and we'll take it out.
I can agree with Tom, and I think that I would leave it up to the council, because I think one of the things that's important is that the trust board membership reflect different points of view and different experiences. So for example, now we have an urban planner and an engineer and a physician, and Hillary is a horticulturalist. I think that's a great mix of experiences, and I would prefer to leave it up to the council to look at the board and say, is this the right composition, as opposed to how many years has this person been on the board?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm hearing at least from 3 of you. Is there a desire for me to remove this section?
I would move to strike it.
Okay. I don't know that I need a motion right now. Do you feel like I do, Elaine? I mean, this is a draft document. If there's consensus to remove it, then we'll remove it.
Right. I think that the motion comes at the very end of all agreed upon.
When we go to actually adopt.
The document. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that probably everyone should have a chance to say if they disagree with that, and then if everyone seems in agreement, then we just move forward with that edit, putting that forward in the draft.
So I've heard from 3 of you.
I'll agree with striking it. Yeah, I think again, I think it goes to this issue of, the history of the origin of the open trust. And I think that, even though there's a desire to have it all aligned, I think we really do need to respect what makes it unique and be able to have that reflected in who's working with the as a trustee.
I would agree with what everyone's saying, and that something that hasn't been discussed here is that the management of public lands is oftentimes on a much longer cycle
Yeah.
So if you're looking at, for instance, the natural resources team and the reports that they've put together about forest health surveys, for example, if that's on a 10-year cycle, then it's going to be important to have people in their terms be able to see those cycles from one to the other through.
And thanks. My couple comments from me. It seems like historically there has been a history of long serving terms by people who've come before us. I haven't done the math at all to look up who was on for how long, but I know when I got on that there were several people who'd been on for long terms. And it seems to me that since there are terms, it is up to the council every 4 years to review individuals, and they can remove someone after 2 terms if that's their choice, if there's another person who better fits the council, the board, the Open Space Conservation Trust Board. So that's my comment.
Craig, I think you're the only one I haven't heard from.
Well, I'm okay with striking it.
Okay. So Kim, if I could just ask you to just note that there was a trustee consensus to remove this section, and I'm going to go ahead and take it out of my portion.
Okay, I will make that note in my copy.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right, so moving down to D. Again, this is just to bring the process in alignment with how the council appoints other board and commission members. Is everyone okay with that?
I have a comment.
Yes.
I did read the amended city procedures, and the section that deals with removal actually puts the burden of the language regarding how removals are going to be done under what circumstances to back on the establishing ordinance. So the establishing ordinance that is in effect is 96-02, doesn't say anything about removal. There's, well, I guess it goes back to my earlier point where there are things that are external to the power of the board, and removal of a member from the board is really in the power of the council. The council can amend that ordinance to say how removal should be done, and it's okay to recite that as a synopsis of how the board will function. It's okay to recite that in the bylaws, but it should be done with a reference to the establishing ordinance. So right now, as it stands, the bylaws simply state that a member can be expelled from the board or trustee if he fails to attend two consecutive meetings without excuse, and that's the only limitation. I think that probably we need to have some, or the council should impose stronger limitations. And I have a recommendation for that, but I guess I would be telling the council how to conduct its business. So anyway, my observation is that there really isn't any governing language in the existing ordinance, and it's perhaps not within our purview to say in our bylaws what the council will do to keep the body in line with its stated goals.
So this, I'm sorry, go ahead, Elaine.
No, I was just going to ask you a question about this, Deb, because my understanding of how reappointments work is that those positions at the end of those terms come open, and I'm not maybe sure of exactly what the new process entails, even if it's not really spelled out. But how it's been done in the past is that current members are given the choice to decide if they want to be considered for reappointment. And then I believe that the way it's been done in the past is that they are considered for that by council, or in the past by the mayor. So, so I'm not sure this is a big change in that.
So you are correct. If a board member position terms, and they are asked whether or not they want to continue serving. That's the guarantee. The council will ultimately make that decision. I just note that the board member desires, or the trustee desires, to continue serving for another term. This particular paragraph on removal is consistent. It is exactly what it says in the municipal code for all of the other boards and commissions, which is why I added it here. The ordinance that establishes the open space is silent on it.
With the exception of the 2 consecutive meetings.
Right, right, yes. So what this is this is language that's taken from the municipal code.
Okay.
Again-
so then, given that the governing languages elsewhere, I would support having a reference to that external document. This is, I guess I'm going geeky myself, because we do this all the time in software development, where we refer to something else, and then that keeps the code consistent. So making sure that the reference is there ensures there's consistency, because then that reference document becomes the governing document, and this is just a reduction, a summary of what it says there, so that the duties and responsibilities of a board member are obvious all in one document. So
Right, and that makes excellent sense in most instances. In the case of open space, I can reference what our municipal code says, but our municipal code does not govern the Open Space Conservancy Trust. It spells out how we handle every other board and commission except for the Open Space Conservancy Trust, because there are separate ordinances that have nothing to do with codification or codifying our municipal code. Your ordinances have no effect on that. Likewise, our municipal code has no effect on the ordinances that establish the Open Space Conservancy Trust. So what we're trying to attempt here, and again, I'm just looking for consistency if the board disagrees, but we're adding language in your bylaws that creates a level of consistency between the same governing language that defines our other boards and commissions and their removal process. I can reference that it is taken from that, but that municipal code, our city code, where this was taken from, does not govern the open space. Does that make sense? Or am I tripping on my tongue?
No, so I guess that, setting aside the language, because I mean, I'm not going to argue that somebody who commits malfeasance in office shouldn't be removed. But, and this is probably a question, unless you had a discussion with the city attorney, is if we're unlike every other board, no other board has a trust document that establishes them. Every other commission or board is a sort of a direct subsidiary of the city council. So the city council is free to make whatever rules they want for those commissions.
Well, it's certainly a lot easier.
Okay. So my question here is got nothing to do with this language. It's the proposition that we can insert language in our bylaws that don't reflect our trust agreement. And I've always, and I don't know where, now I'm confused as to where I got this from, but I've always understood that if you miss 2 consecutive meetings, you could be booted. And Elaine, it sounds to me like that didn't even come from our bylaws.
That's in the ordinance that establishes the trust.
Okay, so that is so the trust ordinance is the governing language.
Yes.
And now we're introducing language that one could argue is in conflict because it adds to stuff that's in the governing ordinance. And I don't want to, I don't want us to be violating sort of a super legal concept, even though we agree with the language that's here. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying. I guess I would, and I'm not an attorney, and Marie, you are or were. I would argue that
Once
this,
a lawyer, always a lawyer.
right? Exactly. And I just like to argue. So I would argue that this elaborates on what is in your trust document. So your trust document is very limited
Yeah.
in scope. And you have bylaws that help add clarification and definition to how you operate. It's like your procedures manual of sorts. And so this, it doesn't, it's kind of like, if I break it down from a clerk perspective, you have the RCW and then you have the city code. The city code can further restrict the city above and beyond what the RCW says, but we can do less than what the RCW says. Does that make sense?
Yep, that does make sense.
So that's how I feel like this works. Your bylaws take it a step further. You can't do less than the other one does, than your trust document does, but you can do more.
That's an interesting concept because there's lots of things in our trust document that we could expand on and suddenly have responsibilities other than we currently have. So that's sort of my out there concern from a principled position. So, but I guess what I would say is if the city attorney agrees that this is an elaboration as opposed to a new requirement that wasn't contemplated by the bylaw, by the trust document, then I'm okay with it. I mean, I certainly agree with the idea. Jerry?
I like your starting premise, which is it's difficult. No one would want to argue this, that someone should not be removed because of malfeasance or neglect of duty or conflict of interest. But I would like to explore, I wonder if Deb, you could share with us, are there times where this has been problematic for any boards? I mean, do you have any examples of this in practice? Is there any reason, are there any risks to adopting this? And then the second thing I might suggest is that we break it into sentences, with the first sentence being what is clearly in the bylaws, saying that absence from 2 or more, the concept that we're all familiar with, that being gone from 2 or more consecutive regular meetings, so it puts you subject to removal, and then the other issues that are there.
Okay.
So first a question and then a proposal.
I believe you all signed the Code of Ethics, the city's Code of Ethics.
Yep.
So
Yes.
that's one way to look at this. It's like a really short form of the Code of Ethics. But I hear what you're saying. And again, I'm not here to argue with you. I'm here to clarify what you have. So, and your Code of Ethics is not identified in your trust document, but you all agreed and signed it because it's a requirement of all of our boards and commissions. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my first question is just, have there, over the times that this has been in place for any other boards and commissions, has it been used? Has it had to have been used? And was there any disagreement around that?
that would require probably quite a bit of research on my part. I've been here since
Oh,
June of 2018. So
okay.
I could certainly ask whether or not there's ever been an instance where we've had to refer to this paragraph. In my experience as a city clerk, which is 20 plus years, so in 2 other cities, having a removal clause is common practice with most cities. And more often than not, well, I'd say in every experience that I've had where somebody has been removed, it has been purely based on attendance.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and then just to revisit the second thing I said, perhaps if we had a first sentence that dealt with the issue of attendance, and then this, because that comes from the ordinance, and then the
Okay.
additional issues separate. I don't know if other people like that idea or not. I just put it out there.
I do like that idea. I think it puts the emphasis in the place where we're most likely to have an issue. And I also don't really like run-on sentences.
And city codes are notorious for that.
I know. I was working when the SEC decided we should all be writing in plain English.
I would love that, but city codes are originally written by attorneys, Maurice. So.
I know. But in keeping with Jerry's suggestion, the last sentence probably should become then the second sentence.
Okay.
And then you have all the malfeasance, just cause business.
Okay. And, going back to really valid points that Tom has made, if we do that, then what I can do is every time there is something that is directly from the ordinance establishing the trust, I can identify that specific ordinance in parentheses or something so that you always know that that language came from your trust. Does that make sense, Tom?
Yes, I also think that having a clause about removal for reasons other than lack of attendance makes good sense. But my main point is that I don't believe that it belongs in the bylaws except in reference to an ordinance that changes how the trust is structured. And I looked at the language in the rules of procedure that were modified in the Agenda Bill 5657, and it says specifically that a board or commission member may be removed in accordance with the ordinance or resolution establishing said board or commission. So I think that rather than modifying our bylaws, the council needs to amend the ordinance that forms the trust in order to add that clause about removal for failure to perform duties or malfeasance or whatever language they want to use.
And that makes sense. Ideally, that's what would occur. That is a much bigger topic for another day. So I can certainly take that under advisement and take it back to the city manager and city attorney. So.
Yes, please.
Okay. Is there consensus among the trustees for me to do that as it relates to this removal paragraph versus breaking it down as what has been suggested? I'm trying to clarify for the minutes the direction coming from the trustees.
I'd support that, yeah.
Yeah, I guess one question I would have is, are all the other boards and commissions in the same position? In other words, whatever their governing document is, that doesn't actually say this either. It's
So
I'm not sure what the genesis of the language is if it's not in the ordinance.
this language, this removal language is in our city code for each of our boards and commissions.
Okay, so we're the ones that are different.
That's correct.
Okay.
And so I was trying to, I'm not deviating from what we're doing with everybody else. I'm trying to create a little bit of consistency where possible. So I've heard 2 schools of thought here, and again, trying to make sure that staff is acting on the desire of the majority of the trustees. Is there a desire to, I've heard two proposals. One is to break this down. The part that resembles your ordinance, and the other piece, or the other proposal is to simply take this whole thing back to the city attorney and recommend amending your ordinance that speaks to removal.
Could I suggest a sort of in between?
Certainly.
It would be, because I understand the burden on the city attorney and the council if we ask the council to consider this. So what we could do is take back to the city attorney and the city manager and say, we kind of come up with two choices. One is to send this language back to the city council for reconsideration, or amend our document so that it only refers to the 2 missed meetings and leave it at that. And that gives this, the city staff sort of a little bit of flexibility in terms of how they want to address the issue.
Okay. So maybe the short answer, or the short-term answer, would be to take the language back to what it says in the ordinance and refer the other piece to the city attorney versus breaking this up as where we started from. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In other words, the simple fix for right now, or the short-term fix, is to leave it as is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. So Kim, I want to make, I'm counting on you as the scribe. The only thing we're going to have in here related to removal, Kim, is the language that's in the ordinance, the trust document.
Okay.
But let me just make sure we haven't really done round robin. Carol, do you agree with that approach?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
And Hillary
I'm fine with that.
and Jerry?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I understand what Deb said about the likelihood of having the ordinance changed. That's low. So I look forward to hearing what we get back from the attorney, I guess.
Okay. And then Craig and Tom, I think I heard you both agree with that. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll keep it simple.
Yeah.
Okay, so just to make sure I have this correct for both Deb's notes and the minutes, we are only including the language related that is reflected in the trust document, and we are taking out what is referenced from the municipal code. And
That's correct.
Staff will bring the language included in the municipal code back to the city attorney's office for determination. Or no?
Yeah, no, I think that's right.
Okay.
I would caution or put out there that that won't likely occur until 2021, given everything that's currently on the list, the to-do list for the city attorney and this. So I just want to make sure we're not setting ourselves up for failure with you guys.
Well, that was one reason why I offered the alternative.
I think that's great, Maria. I think that was a good way to split the baby.
Okay.
Officers and duties. So in a couple of places, you'll see where I'm kind of giving a title to these different sections. That was just to clarify the different sections. This first sentence is, to me, it's grammar. It's the Board of Trustees versus the Trust Board. And then the other language here is to clarify. Obviously, there's been some organizational changes. The chairperson originally said that the chairperson shall schedule meetings. The chairperson really works with, or the board, the trust works with the staff liaison to schedule those meetings. So it's just clarifying how this occurs. We no longer have a Parks and Recreation Director. I have Chief of Operations in here. Is that still correct, Elaine, or is it going to be Public Works Director? Or we could simplify this, given the number of changes that the city's going through, and simply put it as city manager's designee.
I would do that, Deb, because it may end up being the Public Works Deputy Director.
Right.
I think it could go a lot of ways, so I would put the designee.
Okay.
You might want to say city manager or that person's designee.
Yeah.
That's
How
just,
we used to do it.
yeah.
Good catch, Marie. So are there any other concerns about the language change in here?
Yeah, I would just say that we just violated the last sentence. By appointing a committee by vote of the board.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, where are we looking?
That's just, I don't think, it doesn't need to change.
Okay,
It was just a humorous comment.
okay.
Deb, I have a question about how you drafted, and again, this isn't substantive necessarily, but as we look at the second paragraph, which says shall
Okay.
assume ceremonial representative responsibilities when needed. That was great, but I expected that to be in the chairperson, because that's something the vice chair does in the absence of the chairperson, right? So do we, it made me think that that language about ceremonial representative responsibilities should also be in the chairperson's description.
Okay. I actually took that language, I think, from the deputy mayor, or the deputy mayor's.
Okay, I don't feel strongly about it at all. It just was something that
Yep.
yeah, so it's up to
Preside over
everyone
the
else if we want to
meetings. Okay,
I guess I would say that that is encompassed in the language that says represent the Open Space Conservancy Trust. In paragraph
happy.
1.
It looks to me like it's just worded differently under the chair. It maybe is extrapolated a little bit, and it's summed up just neatly into ceremonial representative responsibilities in the vice chair role. That's how I read it, but
Yeah, I kind of object to the ceremonial reference. Because, I mean, the purpose of having a vice chairperson is to be able to step into the shoes of the chairperson when necessary. So they almost, to me, they ought to be congruent to the extent the chairperson is unavailable.
I think, Marie, that this is in the event outside of a meeting where we may, for example, we're doing something to celebrate Arbor Day this weekend, and the deputy mayor is standing in for the mayor. It is outside of presiding over a meeting, but it is a ceremonial representative event. So that's how I read that, as something like that. We don't have occasion to do that very often, but that doesn't mean we won't.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel strongly about any of this. This is just sort of interpretation.
Okay.
Tom, you're the vice chair. What do you think?
Well, it says as the chairperson directs, so
Yeah.
that's all fine with me.
Okay.
okay, so we're okay with this then?
Yep.
Okay, do we need to check with the other people that I haven't heard from?
I think if they haven't spoken up, they're fine.
Yeah, we're fine.
Okay, all right. So number 3 was just to add some clarification to make sure that the secretary is, acknowledging receipt of things or responding to residents in cooperation with the staff liaison so that there's that, we're closing that communication gap and the staff liaison knows what's occurring. So that's usually common sense, but when we're writing things out, we like to be a little precise. So I see a lot of heads nodding. It looks like everyone's supportive of that.
I think we're fine.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And paragraph 4, again, is just language.
Okay. All right. So down here, it gets a little bit more detailed. Again, I don't feel strongly about it. It's just this puts in place a process. It's my understanding that, you know, you all did very well tonight electing your officers. In my experience, it doesn't always go that smoothly. It helps to have a process. And I've witnessed many times how the process gets picked apart in the absence of a process. So this mirrors more or less how the council handles their appointment process for their mayor and their deputy mayor.
So I'm curious about 2/3 vote of the Board of Trustees on paragraph B. And then down below, it's under E, it's a majority vote. So that would be like 5 of 7, 4 of 6, and 4 of 5. Is there any reason it can't, instead of 2/3, it can't just be a majority?
There is no reason. That's a good point. You know, for consistency, it probably should be one or the other. I believe, Elaine, you may recall, and I don't have the document in front of me, I believe your ordinance specifically spells out the number of individuals that constitute a majority. Because the question that comes up inevitably, is it a majority of the sitting officers? So if you have vacancies, if you only have 6 members, is it 4? You do have 7. So, you know, is it a majority of those present?
I see, yeah.
You know, so.
So our quorum is 5 of 7.
Yes.
The 2/3 to me feels like the filibuster rule.
Oh.
Well, we can clarify this. We can say nomination are closed by a motion second and a.
I mean, does anybody have a feeling that it should be anything other than a majority of those present? And we should probably clarify that in F2. To me, it should be a majority of those present.
I don't believe that it spells it out in the ordinance, just that a quorum is at least 5 members of the board.
No, yeah, but on the voting,
Yeah.
I mean, Deb, what did the others say? But it seems to me like it should be a majority of those present, not a majority of the board overall.
Well, we know that you have to have a quorum of members present in order to even hold a meeting. So you'd have to have a minimum of 4 individuals present to hold a meeting.
No, 5.
5.
Yeah, 5.
Okay, it's because your trust defines a quorum as 5.
Yes.
Right.
A minimum of.
If only 5 are present, 3 is a majority. If all of us are present, 4 is a majority. So it's unclear what a majority vote of the Board of Trustees means.
That's exactly right. And do you want 3 members making those decisions? Simply because there are only 5 people present. Do you see how it starts getting really hazy?
Well, how do the other boards do it?
Well, I don't know how they're each allowed to establish their own rules, and I did not research that. my one guiding, light is the council rules of procedure and how they elect their mayor and their deputy mayor.
And that is,
I can bring that document up if that would help. Or let me at least read from it. How's that?
okay.
It seems to me, I mean, there's only 7 of us, right? And we only need to have 5 present. I think and this is only to close the nominations.
No, it's also to elect.
Are you guys looking at the rules of procedure or are you
Yes.
looking at,
Oh, wait, no,
we were, you were looking at it?
title. Yeah.
So you're looking at the city council rules of procedure?
Mhm.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh, look at that.
that's election of the mayor and deputy mayor.
To be elected, so they have the 2/3 to close the motion. And nominee needs a majority vote of the city council, so they're not clear about what that means either.
Not here, no. There is another section. Shoot down to the section that makes sense. This is the appointment process for boards and commissions. And it speaks to ballots and the voting process and so forth because they deliberated and deliberated and deliberated to arrive here.
So it says they must receive the most votes provided they have at least 4. So that may result in round robin appointments. I don't know. It's the only concern I have is the ambiguity. I don't really care whether it's 3 or 4.
Okay. The other 5 members?
Yeah, I agree with Marie. That's why I brought it up. It was really unclear to me what all this meant. So.
Okay. Would you like to use language that says as long as there's a minimum of 4 votes?
No, because, well, then I'd rather say it as majority of the entire board. I mean, look, I believe in getting business done.
Yeah.
I'm in favor of saying a majority of those present.
Yeah. I think we're making this way too difficult and I would agree. Let's just be
Okay.
simple.
All right. So we're going to change this to, and a majority vote of the Board of Trustee or majority vote of those present.
Yeah.
Yep.
And this, yeah, same at the bottom.
Does that work?
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay.
And then F, you've added to F also.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
I would like
You
to
should have come to us first.
Well, this is one reason why I emailed it to you guys 2 weeks ago, but we would have these discussions. It's inevitable and it's good. It's good discussion. So.
May I suggest just to your point, Deb, that we did this well on our own without any election procedures? May I suggest language such as if you scroll up, election procedures in the absence of another approach agreed upon by the Board of Trustees? Is that, because I would hate, it seems to me kind of,
You'd hate to go through this process if you don't have to.
Well,
yeah, kind of awkward to pull this out next year and say, okay, did we get the right number of votes and all? So if we can just agree on it, I'd rather do that. So other people comfortable with that language?
Yeah, it seems a little bit heavyweight to me, and I pulled out some notes on what I consider to be the important points. And so I have alternate suggestions, but maybe that's just substituting one set of words for another. But I think that an important thing is that we should hold a vote especially given the electronic format. So, so there should be a positive vote when we elect someone to be part of the board of, or one of the officers. That's the only real thing that I would point out that seems to be missing in what we did this evening. And then the clarification that the majority of those present, that was needed, and that's good that we resolved that.
Okay, so to go back, so is there agreement with putting something up here similar to what Jerry suggested?
Yeah, my only comment is then we have to have a vote on our procedures.
Yeah.
How about if we just reduce this to paragraph A, anybody can nominate somebody, and paragraph E, to be elected.
Does that work for everyone? A and E only?
Yeah.
Yes, I would, yeah, I'd agree with that. We're really parsing this out and making it so difficult for ourselves.
Well, fortunately, you only have to do this once every couple years.
Yeah.
So is there consensus to remove everything but A and E?
Well, you have to keep F also.
Okay, everything but A, E, and F?
Yeah. I would support that.
Hillary?
I'm good with that too.
All right. Is there anybody that I missed? Okay, so I'm going to delete this. Done. See how easy that was?
Perfect.
We all just lost 10 pounds.
Yeah.
Okay. So the reason why I put as soon as possible thereafter is because of, well, we had a pandemic this year. So does that make sense to everyone?
That works.
Yeah.
So this was to, I don't know if you want me to leave it as it was, or if we go back to the discussion earlier about consecutive terms, this kind of cleans that up. Or we just, I think it's a little bit clearer than succeed himself, herself once.
I would agree.
I think that's good.
Okay. All right. So moving down to I.
Really,
I'm sorry, Tom.
the terms, or the term of office is, well, there's two different terms. And I thought the original language was more clear, because succeeding yourself means you take the same office twice in succession, versus 2 consecutive terms might refer to the term of your appointment, and that's not going to happen. So anyway, I'll leave it to you to choose.
Yeah, I agree with Tom, and maybe the way to fix it is to back in the election to say you're elected for 1-year term. Should be elected for 1-year terms.
What?
It does say that.
I was just about to say, does it say that?
Yeah, up in 1 or, yeah.
I think it says that you need to vote for the positions once a year, but it doesn't stipulate that you
The 1-year
can't
term.
succeed yourself 2 terms.
Okay.
So this just basically, this says, it's a 1-year term, and this clarifies that you can only serve 2 consecutive terms.
Right, so this just establishes a term limit for the position.
Kind of like our president can't serve 12 years.
Oh. So I'm sorry. I'm flipping back. A number and appointment. Where do we say that the officers are 1-year terms?
It's in right under election procedures. Number 1, it says the Board of Trustees shall elect a chairperson, vice chairperson, and secretary for a 1-year term.
Oh, okay. All right, then I'm good with everything.
Okay. All right, so moving down, this number H is just to clarify that it needs to be not only tendered to the mayor, but to the chairperson and staff liaison. The reason why is communication that's a little bit broader is helpful in these situations. Oftentimes, if the mayor gets something, the chairperson or the staff liaison may not know right away, or maybe it gets lost in their emails. Likewise, I've had resignations just go to the staff liaison and the chairperson or the mayor doesn't know. So this just kind of expands the communication circle on a resignation.
I think that makes sense, but we now have a conflict with the prior paragraph.
Okay,
H, we've already covered, but now it says if you don't come twice, you forfeited. Is that what the trust agreement says?
this is part your original bylaws is what it says.
And that's what I'm pointing out. We've now said, well, we've got this in two places now, and they say different things.
That's correct.
Well, it used to say may, right?
Pardon me?
It used to say may.
Repeat what you said.
Well, all I'm saying is, I think we should get rid of this paragraph H because we've already covered it.
Is everyone comfortable with that? We'll keep it up in the removal section versus the election section.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Craig, what point were you making?
Oh, in the H, it said may. It looked like may was the original language, and it's been changed to shall. So it was more permissive.
I don't know what it means to say you may. I mean, how are you going to resign if you don't tell somebody?
Well, under H, you're out.
Well, the resignation sentence covers more than just I didn't show up.
Correct, yeah.
We shall and may, I mean, may is you can if you want.
Right.
Shall
Right.
is you will.
Yeah.
Is how we deal with it in our world. Okay, so we're taking this piece out.
Yeah.
All right. Coming down, again, this was just clarifying language and being clear about, it originally said it'll be open to the public. I added pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act because that's what defines what is an open public meeting, where boards and commissions in our government operate. So, and there are rules in the Open Public Meetings Act. I mean, I can go into a lot of detail. I think you guys are tired. There are rules that I have to follow and the staff liaisons have to follow that comply with the Open Public Meetings Act. That make sure that things are open to the public, that the public receives proper notice, that you receive proper notice, so on and so forth. B, the board shall meet at least we did this because we were in again, because of the pandemic. Your ordinance says you will meet semi-annually. Your bylaws had it once a quarter. So we're suggesting that you meet at least semi-annually, and other meetings can be set up as needed versus, locking you down to meeting more if you don't need to. And if you do need to, then you do. Does that work? Okay.
Deb,
Yes, ma'am.
just one thing. I would like to take out the reference to Robert's rules because we don't do Robert's rules in our meeting. And I would hate for somebody to say your decision was invalid because you didn't use Robert's rules.
And there is no requirement that you operate under Robert's Rules of Order. There is a requirement that you conduct your meetings at least in compliance with the OPMA. So
Yeah, and I totally agree with that, but I don't know. I don't like, the lawyer of me doesn't like having things in there that,
process for the sake of process.
right, that it's just a bludgeon for somebody to use if they feel like it.
How does everyone else feel? Is there consensus to take that out?
Yes.
Hillary?
I'm fine with it, seeing as I don't know what it means.
My
I'll go with what Marie says because she's the attorney.
response to that, my response is lucky you.
Yeah, lucky you is right.
I'm just saying, based on principle, right? You don't want to open yourself up to unnecessary vulnerability. So that logic seems to make perfect sense.
Okay, we'll go ahead and remove that. Keep things simple for you guys. Special meetings. Again, this is a clerk thing, and this is what's defined by the OPMA.
Mhm.
The OPMA requires a minimum of 24 hours advance notice. Obviously, there would never be an effort by your staff liaison to give you only 24 hours notice unless we're talking about an emergent situation, which is highly improbable. But it's just making sure that the language is consistent with the OPMA. And that a special meeting may be scheduled by the chairperson, staff liaison, or at the request of a majority of the Board of Trustees. So it's your previous language required 10 days notice. And that may not always be realistic.
Yeah. I think it's a good change.
Okay. Coming down to agendas, similar, same thing here. Again, all of this is related to the OPMA, at least 24 hours notice. But again, and you previously added in here 6 days prior. So I said, but preferably 6 calendar days prior, and clarifying 6 calendar days versus 6 business days.
Mhm.
Meeting cancellation, same thing. And the reason why this was added has a lot to do with the pandemic. The city manager, due to the emergency ordinance in the state of this, of the pandemic, chose to cancel all meetings for an extended period of time. So that's why that's in there. And I'm sorry, Craig, I didn't see your hand.
Oh, sorry. Well, so there seems like the majority of our meetings are canceled because of a lack of quorum. Is that something that needs to be in here, or is that just assumed, or is this a different section than that?
That would be, I can clarify that. That falls under the OPMA if there's a lack of a quorum.
Okay.
If there's a lack of a quorum, if you know that in advance, your staff liaison will cancel the meeting. If you don't know that in advance and you don't have a quorum show up, you open the meeting, you announce that there's no quorum, and then you close the meeting and everyone goes home. So
I think that's a good add, Craig, because we do have that happen. And
okay, so why don't I add that in here? I'll just put down here, absence of quorum,
yeah,
and then I can define that.
you probably want to say something like, if it has been determined in advance or at the meeting. Well, at the meeting, you just don't meet. But what Elaine does is she polls us all and says, are you going to be here?
Mm-hmm.
And then cancels the meeting. So something like, if it is determined in advance that a quorum will not be available, the meeting will be canceled.
I have a question for you about this, Deb. So is there a reason why this can't be embedded in the meeting cancellation paragraph after the lack of agenda items? So lack of agenda items or known lack of quorum, something like that. Or advanced knowledge.
I can do whatever you guys want.
I'm just curious if you've seen that, it needs to be specifically called out, the absence of quorum, or whether that can be lumped.
It doesn't need to specifically be called out. It's kind of it's a preference, personal taste of the board or the trust.
I would make it a separate sentence only because the first sentence of meeting cancellation sort of assumes that we're at a meeting and we're deciding to cancel a future meeting. Otherwise, I don't know how you get a vote or a consensus.
I'm gonna just kind of leave that and come back to it, and I'll figure out the language for you guys.
Sounds good.
I'm
I just
hearing
wanna
you,
make-
Craig. I'm hearing you.
I just want to make a quick note on that, Marie. The second sentence in that paragraph, again, is foreseeable before a meeting. So that's, a cancellation.
Oh, no, you're right about that. You're right. I was focusing in the wrong place to put it in. I agree with Elaine. We just stick it at the end of that sentence.
Right here.
Yeah. And Deb, I think cancellation is misspelled. I think it has 2 L's.
It's actually spelled both ways. It just depends on personal.
Oh, is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
I like the word canceled. Canceled can be 1 L and 2 L's. One's English and one's American, I guess. But I'll do whatever you guys want. So
Two L's.
you got it.
I like 2 L's.
All right.
It feels more normal to me. And then further on in the whole body of it also.
Well, you're talking to the worst speller in the world, so whatever you guys want works for me. So we're not doing this here. Are we still going to have a section on quorum?
No, I like where Elaine asked for it to be put.
All right.
And just, I'm sorry, there are other verbs in that paragraph that need 2 L's.
Okay. Kim, did you catch that? And I'll just do a find and replace.
Thank you.
You're welcome. This was just grammatical stuff here. Amendments. Again, instead of members, I put trustees. Written notice must be given to the trustees 2 weeks in advance for consideration. The public will get notice of amendments when the agenda goes out. So that's why I took that out. And then bylaws review should be, and this was just clarifying, you no longer need to state starting in 1996. That's just apparently been there since 1996.
There's a typo, reviewed, first
What-
sentence.
First sentence, carefully reviewed. Very good, thank you. How is it that you're able to read at this time of night, Craig? All right, moving down to this very end piece. This was just a little bit of cleanup. The city council person is 2 years. I made that 6-year terms. Board of trustee or trustee instead of trustee member. Again, this is all cleanup. This right here that was added, this is required by the Attorney General's office for all boards and commissions of a council to take that training. You've all been through that training, so I added it here as part of your training. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yes.
I'm rushing through now. And then I also added all trustees are required to sign the City of Mercer Island Code of Ethics statement. So,
Yep.
whew, we're done.
Oh my goodness.
Thanks.
You're a champ, Deb. You really are. That was.
There is a
Nicely
bottle
done.
of Syrah waiting for me at home.
We each owe you a bottle. How about that?
Yeah.
All right, you guys, thank you for being patient. I will stop sharing my screen and let Elaine take over.
I'm actually going to hand it back to Marie for the script. I believe there's only quadrant reports.
Quadrant reports.
Yeah.
So let me start at the top of, I'll start at the bottom of my screen this time. Jerry, quadrant report.
I'm not muted. As I said before, I've been walking a lot, and was able to see a couple things last week that I sent over to Elaine, and by the next day, the first one was cleaned up, and I sent her another tree that was down. And I walked last night and was surprised there wasn't more blocking the trails, but it's really impressive that they were out so fast and cleaned up. So that's all for me. Thanks. That was for the northwest quadrant.
Craig?
I sent a little picture of a Buddha statue that was sitting on a stump
Oh,
in the
yeah.
northwest quadrant. And I just said, is this appropriate? But I don't know how long it's been there. It looks like it's been there a really long time. So I don't know.
Started right after the whole lockdown started. It's been up there for months.
Yeah. I think I originally saw it in August.
Yeah, and there are lots of little rocks running around the park also that have been painted. I don't know how other people feel, but I sort of feel like that's community participation. And I don't feel like dampening people's enthusiasm. It's not destructive.
Okay.
Hillary?
Oh, you're muted.
Marie and I walked a few times in the southeast quadrant in the past couple months, and it was all looking really good. I have to say I haven't walked since the recent storms, so I don't know if there are any down trees or anything, but she had warned me that in the past, sometimes the manure from the horses had been a problem, and it really didn't look that bad at all.
Tom?
My assigned quadrant is the northeast quadrant, and I haven't been out there for several months, so I really don't have anything to report.
Okay. Carol?
Yeah, so I've got Northeast, and I think I said in part when we were talking about other things, I think early on, as COVID started and the staff reductions happened, there were some paths that were kind of, you had to shimmy through because of overgrowth encroaching on the trail. But, come June, significant improvement. And I did go and walk, yesterday was the day after the winds, and, there were things strewn about. But it looked like some of them had already been, put somewhere else. So I don't know if that was, someone else helping, or if, that was the operations group doing that. But, it was easy to get through.
Yeah. And I was, Mike and I walked the dogs in the northwest quadrant, I think the day after the storm, and it already looked pretty cleaned up. We could tell that this crew had been there.
Yeah, I suspect that's what happened on the Northeast too.
Yeah.
There were some rotted things and, other, kind of out, to the side, and they weren't on the trail itself.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that Andy Prince spent the entire day after the windstorm basically walking all of the trail. He covered almost every open space.
Yeah.
I asked him specifically about Pioneer. He said he did a lot of trail clearing there.
Mm-hmm.
Day. He said he was able to hit most of the trails. Some of the interior minor trails he wasn't able to get to. So please let me know if you're on any of those and you see anything, like Jerry said, as soon as we receive a report, we'll send someone out to clear it. And someone else had brought something else up I was going to respond to. Oh, I can't remember.
And, and this reminds me, when everything was not happening, I did, and Hillary came on, I informally reassigned people to their quadrants. Is everybody okay with those quadrants? And should we just put that in the, I'll send it to you, Elaine, we can just stick it in the minutes too, because I think that's something we've normally done. Or do you have it?
I do remember what I was going to tell you. There had been some complaints about manure in the southeast quadrant, a couple that came in this summer. And so actually a member of our CRT team, our customer response team, actually was working with the Saddle Club on that. So so they were in communication with them about making sure that they're getting out there pretty regularly. I know they've had changes in membership, and that's usually when we see that happening. So we've worked with the stable manager to make sure that they're getting out there regularly to scoop off the trails.
Okay, great, thank you. Because it did look fine when we were there. Kim?
Marie, could you actually just, for my ease in minute taking, reiterate who is in charge of which quadrant?
You know what? Let me find my email that went around to everybody and I will send it to you.
Okay, that'd be great.
No,
Thank
I
you.
don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
And Kim and Elaine, please let the crew know. I mean, they really did a phenomenal job cleaning up after the storm. And we know they're shorthanded and it just makes it all the more difficult and all the more appreciated.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll pass it along.
Okay, thank you. Any other business? Show of hands, if you have something, please raise your hand. Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Oh, sorry. Elaine, you didn't raise your hand soon enough.
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt your motion, but I just want to make sure that everyone is aware that the next regularly scheduled meeting is on November 19th. I would love to know if anyone knows that they cannot make it to it. I will, as usual, send out a poll about who can make that meeting, but please let me know if you know you cannot. I'll work with Marie on that.
So noted. Yes, Kim.
I also just want to give a friendly reminder for those that didn't know that Saturday is the city's official Arbor Day. It's our third annual Arbor Day, and Pioneer Park is actually the location of a small socially distanced planting event that's going to be led by Earth Corps. And so Elaine and I will be at the park at different points in the day, and people will be planting the northwest corner of the northwest quadrant, where Elliot Hendrickson installed the fence last year. So we're planting that bare area and a trail intersection on Saturday. So just wanted to make you all aware of it.
So Kim, maybe this is, I don't know if this is appropriate right now, but I have been noticing that fence could use a little more support.
So are you referring to the fence next to the Don Cohen bench?
It's the one that,
or Elliot's fence.
I don't know. It's the very long green plastic fence.
Yeah, so I will let you know that that is actually coming down entirely. Okay. I'm having a contracted crew plant that entire area, and I'm going to be replacing it with temporary wood snow fencing. So it's going to be still a temporary fence, but it's going to be more attractive and more sturdy. And so rest assured that by the end of November, that will be remedied.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm going to volunteer some extra poles, but it sounds like we don't need them now.
Yeah, no, that has been high on my list, and I have been chomping at the bit to take care of that. So,
Hillary?
Marie, I found your email about the quadrant assignments and I forwarded it to Kim and to you, so you don't have to worry about it.
Thank you. And I do, because I don't know that everybody else knows, but I do know that Hillary's been working with Kim. And one of the things she was doing was setting up the Earth Core project for Saturday. So thank you. I'm going to find some time to get out there because I love planting in the park.
Yeah, and I will just add that because we need to maintain very specific attendance levels, you actually have to pre-register for our Earth Core events. You cannot drop in. And so unless you have already registered and are expected, unfortunately, you can't just come because we are following all of the state's COVID-19 group policies. And so we can't have more than 5 attendees. So you are welcome to certainly walk by and say hello and give your appreciation. But sadly, those events are full. I mean, the good news is that they're full. The bad news is that I can't just have you stop in.
Yeah, I had to sign up for one. It seemed like a long time away, it was going to be in November. So
Yeah.
At that point, most everything was filled up.
Wow.
We do have openings we have 3 more events this year. So if you're willing to work in another park, you are welcome to join in. Those will be likely invasive removal maintenance instead of planting, but still good work.
Okay,
It's good that they're oversubscribed because it says that people, really are committed to Mercer Island and its outer and its open spaces.
Carol, would you like to make your motion now?
Yeah, I'd like to move. We adjourn.
There a second?
I second.
Second.
Is everybody in favor? Raise your hand. So moved. Up there's Gary. Thank you. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. I think this worked out really well.
Yeah, this was good.
Good experience.
Yep.
See you next time.
And
Okay.
thanks, Deb, for all the work you put into it, because I know it's not, cookie cutter.
Yeah.
You're very welcome. I hope we bring back something that everyone's okay with.
Perfect.
All right.
Thank you.
Good night.
Night,
Everybody.